share my screen almost the entire workshop. So I won't really see you. So whenever you have a question, just please say something, and then I will respond to your question first and return to the main room. Yeah, I think that's about it. You can also follow along with the slides on the website, but I will show where to find them in an instant. If you don't have any other questions before we start, then I would just jump right into it. Anne-Kathrin and then you get redirected to this Netlify website, and then you can go to talks and workshop. And then this is the workshop I'll be giving today, and then you find the slides here. So we basically go through the slides and I just explain everything that you see there. So if you want to follow along, I think it's best to also open that. I also added like a number of links to the slides, so whenever you need additional material, additional information, you'll find stuff in the slides. And then I also, so whenever I type something, so sometimes it's nice to see like shortcuts I'm typing, then you see that in the lower in the lower screen here. So you just, yeah, you can just see like the keystrokes that I type, and then maybe you can also use them for your own work. Sometimes they're a bit different because they're like custom setup, but most of them are would pretty much also work for you. And then I already wrote that I'm working on a MacBook, and some stuff is a little bit different on a Windows, but the main ideas are pretty much the same. So I think you can definitely follow along. I will also talk a little bit about Windows, but I won't cover everything in Windows as well. So sometimes it's a bit different, and then maybe after the workshop you need to Google some stuff in addition to what I present here. But the main idea, I think it's pretty much the same, and also the main commands are pretty much the same. All right, so what I will present today, and we have like a tight schedule, so I really try to stick to 2 hours. So I will also jump over some stuff a little more quickly because I did like a similar workshop in May, and that was a 2-day workshop. So I'm trying to cover everything I presented in those 2 days, or like most of it in 2 hours now. So let's see how that goes. But I'm optimistic. So I will show you how to write, share, and present code and text using R and Quarto. How to render your code and text into different outputs, like for example, a Word document or a PDF or an HTML document, and also how to render them using specific style settings, like the APA7 style, for example, for a Word document. I will show you how to use Zotero with R to manage your references, and also to add references to your papers that you write in R and Quarto, and how to collaborate using Git and GitHub. And if you're right now wondering about what is Quarto actually, and you've, for example, heard of R Markdown, then everything I cover today can also be transformed into R Markdown. So Quarto and R Markdown are pretty similar. I will talk about some of the advantages of Quarto compared to R Markdown, but like almost everything is the same. So like you can still work with your R Markdown files and use the stuff that I present today also with your R Markdown files. It's no problem at all. The resources for this workshop, so I used many of Thomas Mock's presentation slides also for this presentation. So he gave an intro workshop for Quarto that was very helpful also for creating my slides. So many credits go to him and his presentation. And then there's also like a GitHub repository, and there are other resources that I link in the slides that you find in the slides. Okay, then I told you don't really have to prepare anything for the workshop, but you need the latest version of RStudio and R. So I just assumed that you downloaded RStudio by now and have a running R version on your computer. So what I would like you to do now is open up RStudio. So I would do that, yeah, just here. So I have an RStudio in my menu bar, and then you would just copy paste this. So now you need the slides basically, and just copy what you find on the slides. I would just make that a bit easier like this. So you have to code right from the start kind of, but I think it's also a good thing to start with. I'm just cleaning my console. So if you navigate to R or RStudio, it should look very similar to this. I mean, I have a I have a custom font style and everything, so my RStudio might look a bit different than yours, but the basic idea is the same. So you have the terminal up here usually, then you have a global environment, like the environment, which is storing your variables or data frames. And then you have like files or all the output stuff that you can generate down here. So right now we go to the console, so we don't work in the like in the pane up here, but we work in the console, and we go and we just insert this link. So we have the package list. This is basically telling R, hey, take all those packages and install them. And I would like you to run that now. So I have already installed all those packages, but you can always reinstall them and they're updated to the newest version. All right, that worked for me. Did anyone struggle with it? Alrighty, so that is just for setting up everything, like the basic packages you need to use Quarto, to use some commands from the tidyverse. Okay, then we're already set up for the workshop. So if you have already worked with R Markdown, you know probably how it works. So basically you start with an R Markdown document, so that ends in .rmd. And then there's an engine that is called knitr that is taking the RMD and converting that into Markdown. And then there's another engine kind of that is called pandoc that is taking the Markdown document that was generated and that exports that to any like output format that you specify. So it could be like a report in PDF or Word, it could be a presentation, or it could be an HTML or a project, like a book or something. And Quarto is kind of the same. It's just, yeah, Melanie? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's pretty, I can just show that again. So you, oops, now I have the chat again here. So you go to, it's my website. So I set up this website and you, okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, you go to the website, then talks and workshops, and then you find it there. Okay, and Quarto is kind of like a similar idea, and it also uses knitr, or it can use knitr. Just the pandoc stuff is set up a little bit differently, so it uses Lua filters that are then used to generate different outputs, and that means kind of that you don't really need additional packages for working with Quarto. So in R Markdown, for example, you need a package like Jeringan, like a package for generating slides. You need another package, Bookdown, for generating book outputs. You need another package, Blockdown, for blog posts. And in Quarto, it's everything included. So due to those Lua filters, it can generate different outputs within Quarto, so you don't need additional packages. That is kind of one of the advantages of Quarto. So everything is like batteries included. So you have one thing, Quarto, and then it does everything you want. And then there's another advantage is that Quarto can also use Jupyter as an engine, which means that you can also work, for example, with Python code in Jupyter notebooks. So I've worked with Jupyter notebooks before and using Python there, and you could also do the same in a QMD file, and then generate engine Jupyter, and then generate your kind of Jupyter notebook to different output formats. If you don't work with Jupyter notebooks or Python, it's like, yeah, then you don't really have that big of an advantage using Quarto, but still this is very powerful, I think, if you also want to combine, for example, R and Python within one notebook. So Quarto is basically a command line interface like R Markdown that renders plain text documents or mixed formats into static PDF, Word, HTML, reports, books, websites, presentations, and many more. As I said, it's kind of batteries included. So since RStudio, this version and beyond, Quarto is already there, and you can use all the nice features of Quarto. And also, I think in the future, R Markdown will still be supported, but I think there will be more support for Quarto. And I think at some point, it will be better to use Quarto than R Markdown. So I think maybe if you're just getting into R Markdown, I think it's better to start with Quarto actually. If you already have like many R Markdown documents, I don't really recommend converting all of them into Quarto now. I think it's just not really needed. But for those who just start with like R and R Markdown and all that stuff, just start with R and Quarto. It's kind of the same idea, and you get support in the future as well. And you have all the nice features. And I also added some links here, so there's more info on Quarto. It's like a help site that you can visit, and they have many nice explanations also, like how to render stuff, how it looks like. Okay, then rendering a Quarto document. For this, I will just first generate a Quarto document, and you can also follow along with that if you want to, because I think it's a nice exercise to just generate or to get like an idea of the workflow, how to actually produce a Quarto document. So I would always start with a new project. And then I would start in a new directory and use a Quarto project. Browse to the directory where I want to store this. I will store it in my Dropbox, just because I think it's not that sensitive in the reporting. So that is where I store all my like websites and all that stuff. And then we have the workshop Quarto. So you need to select a folder that makes sense to you. And then I will generate a new folder. And that would be Quarto workshop. And then the directory name, Quarto project 1. It's not the best name, but let's just create it there. And then it automatically switches to that folder. So now you see in the folder structure here, so in the files, if you go to the files tab, then you already see that some documents or some files were generated. And that is always the R project, and that is now also QMD file and the YML new file, and then just generate a Quarto document from the usual way. So you go to File, New File, and then Quarto document, and then this opens like the setting for the new document. You give it a title. So let's say the test run 3. And then you click the HTML as the default output format. Engine is knit-R, that is correct. And you want to have a document, not a presentation or something interactive. And you can, of course, also add an author here. So I just click Anne and create that document. Now this is still not saved in your environment, so you would still need to save that, give it a name, say first document. You're in the correct folder, save that there, and then you see it here in your files. So that is the first document that you generated, and this is nice because it already has some default code in it. If you go from visual to source, you also see the source code of this. I hope that basically worked for everyone. If it doesn't, just try after the workshop maybe. It's just like an introduction how you would work with Quarto documents, and usually it's kind of easy to generate one. So it's just like, again, file, new file, Quarto document, and then you have your first Quarto document. And then rendering that goes like with the R Markdown document. So it also looks very similar to an R Markdown document. If you've worked with that before, it really resembles an R Markdown document a lot. And then you would just go to the render button instead of the knit button. And then this is generating the HTML output for you. And here you already see some differences to R Markdown because it's prettier. So it looks a bit better than the R Markdown HTML, I think at least. But all the rest is very similar. We will also talk about the details of this document in an instance. Could you all follow along? Perfect. So that is the first option, to render a Quarto document via the render button. And then there are other ways to render this, and this is sometimes needed. I think you also get along with the render button if you don't have any special settings or anything special you want to do with your Quarto. But if you just have like a very simple Quarto output and you want to generate that to the HTML, and you can specify that here, or like use any other output format and change that in the format section, that is totally fine. But I just want to show you other ways to render a Quarto document. Also kind of to make you lose the fear of maybe using other ways of executing code. So you can always use the shell to execute your document or to run your documents. And the shell is nothing else but the terminal in Mac, and it's called PowerShell in Windows. And we will also, I will give like a short intro on how to use that also in this workshop. But basically what you do in the shell is navigate to your folder via some commands. I will talk about that a little bit. So now I'm in the reporting folder, and then there was the, let's see what's in there. There's the workshop Quarto. And then I have the Quarto workshop. And then I have the Quarto project 1. And here I find all the files that I have within that directory, and that just corresponds to what you see basically here. So you go to reporting, workshop Quarto, Quarto workshop, and then you see all those documents here that you see here. It's kind of the same basically. And what you can do now is render this via the terminal. So you would just click like Quarto, render, and then you use your first document .qmg. And then this is run from the terminal. It's kind of really the same. You get the same output. Everything is kind of the same. It's just like a different way of running things. And sometimes you need to work in the terminal. Like for some stuff, for R and Quarto, you need to use the terminal. And I think it's like a very nice tool. I'm not really a terminal expert at all, and I still find it very convenient and easy to use. It's really more like this fear of opening the terminal is kind of, I mean, it's a weird thing. If you haven't ever worked with it before, you can, of course, just use the terminal. That's kind of the same. So for me, it's called iTerms because I have a different, because it looks better and it's easier to navigate stuff in iTerms than in the terminal. But it's basically this. So this is the terminal, and you can use all the commands that I used there with the terminal. And yeah, it has many, many advantages using the terminal, being able to, especially for version control and GitHub, what we will be talking about in the second part of the workshop. And it's just like an encouragement to use the terminal. So I really like working from the terminal, and it's really not that strange after a while. All right, so that's the second way of rendering documents. And since I now already talked about the terminal a bit, I thought maybe we can do like a quick excursus on the PowerShell and the terminal. So for those who work on a Windows computer or laptop, you use the Windows PowerShell. And many of the commands are very similar to what I just presented now. Some are a little bit different, but it's very easy to find out. And you would start your PowerShell by clicking Start, typing PowerShell, right-clicking the Windows PowerShell, and then click Run as Administrator. That is kind of how you open up this, what I opened up the Mac now using the iTerms. And in the terminal, it's the Launchpad. So this one here, then you click Terminal, and then you can open that up and use that as your terminal. That's basically it. And it will become important later on. And then there's a third version, which is via the R console with the Quarto package. So we just downloaded the Quarto package again. So that should work for all of you. And you can now just Quarto render. I just copy this here. The Quarto document that you just generated, that was, whoops. First, actually I think I never really, yeah, you need to say library Quarto first because it needs to load it, and then it's generating this as well. Yeah, so the 3 ways of rendering Quarto documents. And it's practical sometimes to use different ways of rendering stuff, but for a start, this render button is just fine. Change your mental model. So I found this very useful, kind of as a metaphor on how to use Quarto or R in general and what it means to use Markdown or Quarto instead of Word, for example. So all the text stuff you can, of course, also write in Word, right? So this is kind of, if you're writing a paper, you can copy paste everything to Word, and then you have like your nice paper. Maybe sometimes it looks awful, but I mean, there are ways to generate Word documents that look okay. And then usually you have a source code that looks like the output. So you have your text in the source, and that is already the output. So it kind of looks the same. And then with R and Quarto, you have a source code that doesn't look at all like the output file. So you have and I think that's also where all the magic comes from and all the fun in generating these documents, is that you have like an ugly looking source code, and then you get like a really beautiful looking output file, like an HTML file, PDF, or whatever you want. And I think, yeah, it's just very powerful because you can make like, or specify so many settings in the source code that you then see in the output file that is not really possible to do in Word. So most of the stuff that you do in data analysis, you just cannot really output that in a nice way to a Word document unless you use, for example, R and Quarto and render a Word document. That is, of course, possible, but like doing all this in Word, I wouldn't really know how to. So yeah, that is one of the very nice things about using like this, like these interfaces like R Markdown or Quarto for your data analysis and also for your reporting. But it's, of course, a change of a meta model. So if you're used to this, it's kind of a jump to this. It's kind of weird. So working with the QMD, I already gave like a little intro on that, how to generate a QMD file. It's basically a plain text file. So as you see for here on the left side, you just see like the plain text. And it always has some metadata associated with it that is called YAML. That stands for yet another Markdown language, because everything we write in a Quarto document or in an Markdown document is Markdown. So the language is called Markdown, and the YAML is also written in Markdown language. And it's kind of setting some of the features you want to have in your document. So here you see the title of the document, you see the author, you see the format, and the editor's visual, which is not really necessary, so you could also just delete that. And then when I render this, you already saw that this is generated. So you already see that I have the author here, the title here. The format of this is HTML. And then you see all the text that I wrote here. So this is a heading, this is Quarto, and this is some text. Here's a link that you can also click that is leading you to another site. And then you have, again, some text, and here's like a chunk. So this is already a code chunk, a very simple one. You can see that here, and the output is also always shown if you don't say that you don't want to see it. So this is the output of the small code chunk here, and this is the output of the other one. And here you already see that something is added, which looks a bit weird. So this thing here is called hash pipe. I always laugh about that name. And here you can see that a setting is added that is echo.false. And echo.false means that you don't want to see the code associated with the output. So you just want to see the output. If I now say echo is true and render this, then you see also the code here. So then this is rendered with the code along with the output. It's just one of the many settings that you can specify. And it's I don't really know the settings by heart. So I usually go to like search for what are the possible settings, like echo.true, and then there are many others. The hash pipe. Yeah. Usually in Markdown you would put echo equals true here, right? So you would put it here, and then it's equals. So that is how it is in Markdown, and this is what changes to QMD. So you put all the settings here, and I actually find it more convenient how it is in the QMD, because this is sometimes so messy. Like you have echo true, and then you have results, height, and at some point it looks really messy, I think, actually. And here you just have the engine. So R is the engine that I'm using to execute this code. And then all the settings are here in a list. So you can, and also if you click enter here, this is generated automatically. So you don't have to insert the hash pipe every time again, but you can say results hide. I think that's the command. Actually, I'm not really that sure. No. Yeah, no, yeah, it's true. So now you don't see the result, but only the code. So now you see only 2 times 2, but not what is that? Is that 4 or 6? So you don't see the outcome anymore. And that's because I put results hide here. And you can have many other settings. So I just Googled it again. So eval, echo, output, warning. So I can put, if you have a warning, for example, you don't want to see that in the output, you just say warning false. Or if you have, yeah. So anything, or you can even say, hey, don't evaluate this at all. So if I say eval false, I think this is also overriding everything else, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's not. So let's put it like this. Yeah, I think then you, no, actually. No, include false, sorry. I think it's include. Yeah, you can play around with it. At some point you find out what is. Yeah, so now it's excluded altogether. So you don't even see the code anymore, but also not the output anymore. So there are many different settings to find that out very easily. It's not that complex. And very convenient to use because, for example, imagine you want to have a paper or website or whatever, and you want the readers to sometimes see the code, sometimes not. So it can be like different functionality. And you can specify the different settings in this execution commands here. So very convenient. If you want to have global settings, you can specify them up here. I also don't remember how, but I think it's like, yeah, it's like this, execute, and then this is applied to the entire thing. And then you can override that via the ones here. So if I say, for example, include true here, or let's say echo true, I say that here, then always the code will be shown unless you say in one chunk echo false. Then this one is overriding the general setting. Yeah? All right. Yeah, a lot. Usually I always use general ones. Because at some point it becomes cumbersome to always write echo false. And if you already know you want to show the code for your entire document, then having echo true as a general setting here makes a lot of sense. And then if you have one setting where you don't want to show the code because 1 + 1 is a little bit embarrassing to show, then you can always say echo false only for that one. And then this is excluded then this code is excluded from the output. So I would always work with general ones and then set specific settings in the ones where you want to have a specific setting. Okay, so we covered the YAML header. So this part here, that's also very similar to R Markdown, and R Markdown is this. So it's with equal signs. And here it's just the colons, I don't know. And also, I think the format is not HTML, but HTML output in R Markdown. And here it's just HTML, well, whatever, it's not really that different. We talked about the code. And we talked about text a little bit. So this is code chunks, and you always specify a code chunk. So for me, the shortcut, and I think it's a general shortcut, is like Command Option I. And then you generate a new R code chunk. So you don't have to type the dashes and then the R all the time, but it's Command Option I for me. And then you get a new code chunk, and then you can say 7 × 6. Let's stick to the easiest stuff. And then this is added to your document, and also rendered, of course, if you want to render it. Okay, I already told you a little bit about the YAML header. So it's some sort of like setting general options for your document. It's controlling how the document is rendered and how the output looks like. And the information you include here can affect the code, the content, or the rendering process. And you also get the hang of the YAML settings after a while, after also using like templates, and you see how those are set up. It's really not that difficult to understand the YAML header. It's more like it's setting options for your entire code. It's setting options for how this looks like at the end. So for example, you can also include a table of content. You can change the font style by specifying a font style file here. You can use a bibliography. So there are many settings you can include here. This can become very long, the YAML header, but it's like meta settings for your document. Here you already see that TOC means that you see a table of content. Let's just try that. And if you specify stuff for the HTML output, I think this is actually 4. And then TOC true. And yeah, what is important is that spacing matters. So usually I would never work with a plain QMD document. I would always use templates, and there the the spacing is already included oftentimes. But if you don't have it included and run it, you already see whether it runs or not. If it does, now I have the table of contents here. So this is of course not very exciting because I just have 2 headings. But if I had more headings in a very long document, it's nice to have a table of contents for your HTML files. And this just works by specifying the TOC true, for example. And then, of course, I told you a little bit already about the different output formats. So it's always like format and then some format. So it could be HTML, PDF, Reveal, JS. It can also be a Word document. But it's always format and then the format you want to use. And if you have specific settings for a certain format, then you put that on the next line, inserting 4 spaces here, and then you put the options for the specific format on the next line again, inserting like 2 tabs, I think, here. But if you just want to have HTML without any specific settings, then it's just like this. Or it's a PDF. Let's just see whether that actually... Yeah, so I can generate a PDF document. This would be the PDF. It's not an HTML anymore, but I specified PDF in the YAML header now, and now this is rendered into PDF. But of course, for PDF, I cannot have a table of content, or I can, but it looks different than for the HTML. So I would need to specify that setting for the PDF version of this. But yeah, so you can really have different output formats. Yeah, then add additional arguments under the output format. So always use a new line and then insert some space and then insert some settings, additional arguments there. And spacing matters. So you can have like option 1 for HTML, option 2, and so on. And the spacing here matters. And YAML is useful for avoiding to type all the options. For example, if you render stuff from your terminal, you would have to type 2 HTML if you don't have that specified here. And you can kind of prevent that by just inserting HTML or PDF up here. So the YAML header kind of saves you some time in the execution of the command if you're running that from terminal. And at some point, this becomes very relevant because imagine you want to have code for it, you want to have an alpha level, you want to have a ratio, you want to have HTML and all that stuff. If you don't have those settings here and you want to render that document with those settings in the terminal, then you would need to insert all this text here. And that's at some point very annoying. The Quarto workflow, so that's also very nice about Quarto and the new R version in RStudio is that you have those background jobs. And Quarto is always run in a background job. That means if you have a very complex Quarto document that is very long and it takes like 5 minutes to run it, for example, you can just do other stuff while it's run. So you can just execute this, leave this here in the running, in the background jobs, and just go on and change other documents, work with other documents, and render them as well. Then they're added to the background jobs. So it's very convenient if you want to like work fast and work on other stuff while this is rendered. So very nice with the background jobs. I told you about Markdown. So all this stuff that you see here is Markdown language. And yeah, Quarto is based on Pandoc, and it's using variations of Markdown as the document syntax. And Markdown is basically just a plain text format that is designed to be easy to write and to read. So Markdown, I mean, you can read this text and you understand it, right? So it's not not a very complex coding language or anything. It's just very easy, and there are some commands for the formatting and for the style, but it's generally very easy to write and also to understand. So that is the nice thing about Markdown. I think you get the hang of Markdown within 2 hours of using it. It's really not that complex. And you write all the text in a Quarto document using Markdown. And those are basically the most important settings for text formatting. So you can have italics and bold. So this is, for example, bold because there are 2 asterisks. And then superscript, subscript, strike through, and verbatim code. So yeah, I think you get the idea. Then you can have different headings and levels of headings. That's also relevant for your table of content, for example. So I can have like a first level heading here. Workshop Quarto, and then subheadings here, or like a third level heading. Like this. Let's change this back to HTML. And let's maybe also add some nice italics. Saving that and running it in the background jobs. And now you see this is italicized, and you have a third level heading. And if I didn't specify the table of content, but of course you would now see a table of content also with the different heading levels. So very nice, very easy to do. Then you have code. I already said something about the different execution options that you have here. And the code is just generated like normal R code. If you've worked with R before, you know how to write all this. So you have a new code chunk. Why not just copy paste this over here? Because it's such a nice output. So you have output location column. I don't even know what that means. Just not included. Then you can specify a label, for example, for this figure. Figure caption, and the warning here is false. Let's just see how it looks like if I render this. It's already taking a little longer, as you might have realized. And now you see the nice figure here, and you even have a figure caption. Okay. And then I also put a link for the different execution options in the slides. So you can look that up for all the different options that you can set for code chunks. Yeah, in Quarto you can also run Python code. Actually, this doesn't work for me right now because my the setup of my Python engine doesn't want to work with my Quarto document. Because I changed some stuff and updated the new Jupyter version, and now it doesn't work anymore. But usually it's pretty easy to set up an engine that also runs Python code in your Quarto document, so very nice for integrating Python. I will make that run the next days. But yeah, I think it's a very nice add-on for Quarto that you can also run Python chunks in this normal document. So you would, instead of R, you would say Python, and then if you have the Python version downloaded and a Jupyter version downloaded, which is not that hard to do, then this would also run your Python code chunks. Navigating in the terminal. So Quarto is a command line interface, so it means that you can also, of course, always run it via the terminal. And I also put some, I actually have them from Tom's presentation, some nice additional material for the terminal, how to navigate in the terminal in the slides. These are kind of the basic commands that you need to know to survive the terminal. So it's like pwd means to see your current directory, so where you are right now. So I'm in users, Anne-Kathrin, Dropbox reporting. Now I see the path to where I am right now. Then CD is for navigating, so I use that a lot. To navigate one folder up is always 2 dots. So now I'm in the Quarto workshop. Folder LS means to list all the stuff that is in the respective folder where you are. Quarto help, you get some help, like some help instructions. Then you can make a directory by this mkdir. Let's just make that. Let's just make a new folder. And now you see that this new folder is here. So I just generated a new folder from the terminal. And you can also remove that folder, like, no, I can only, via the rm command, I can only remove files, not folders. So let's just remove the Quarto project. No, what do I not need? Oh, I'm actually not sure. I think I need all those, so I cannot really remove anything now. But you would use the rm. Let's just go one up, one up. I think you get the hang of it. So you can navigate like this and remove stuff or add new directories with those simple commands. Yeah. All right, I think it's time for your turn. I think all of you already created a QMD project, so that's very nice. And I would like you to just write some small text or like add some small text, add one chunk maybe to the QMD file and render that and see whether it works for you. And then we can maybe troubleshoot if it doesn't. And if you want to, you can also try opening up your terminal and just execute Quarto render and then render your QMD file via the terminal. And you can also play around with the output formats in the terminal. So you can say, for example, to PDF in the terminal in the PowerShell to render your document to a different output format like a PDF. And I would say we take 15 minutes for that. Then we have a break and then we go to the second part. And I think we're still okay in time. So that is great. But maybe just take 10 to 15 minutes for that. Maybe you need less time. And if anything happens or anything is weird, just say something and then I can go back to a slide and explain that, or we can troubleshoot whatever is going wrong with your project. Sounds okay? Yes. Have you rendered PDF in Markdown already? Yeah. So you have the LaTeX stuff set up. Okay. Yeah, I think like in the last workshop also some people had that problem, and I'm actually not. I think there's a mini LaTeX version for R, and usually that is already there. Yeah, tiny text. Yeah, but I think it's just really installing it. Install tiny text, and then that should already do the trick. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. So there are different options. So what you can do is like the cache. Have you worked with cache before in Markdown? So that is kind of very useful if you have very complex stuff to execute. You can use the cache option. And I know that is I've never done it in Quarto, but that is easy to do in Markdown, but I think also Quarto is the same. So you can say execute cache true, and then whatever you execute, if you've executed it before and it didn't change in the meantime, then it's just not executing it again. And then it's very fast. So for example, if I have here 7 times 6, I mean, this is very easy now. Let's just try it. So I have to run it once, of course. Okay, and this took some while, right? This took like, let's say 5 seconds maybe. And now if I set the cache true and I don't change anything, this should actually go much faster. And it does. So this is not really running this again and executing all this stuff here again, for example, in the ggplot, but it's taking the previous version because I haven't changed anything. If I now change something here, let's say, oh wow, I don't know the geom methods. Do you have a quick idea what to change in the geom plot? I always Google geom plots like to the fullest. But method geom smooth. Yeah, that's good. Point size. geom plot. What do we have here? Point. Okay, let's just try this. Then it would run it again. So now you see again that it's taking longer because it's again running this thing here because I changed something. If I don't change anything, then it's not running it again. And that is pretty great. So if you have very complex stuff, then the cache option is really nice for preventing this from running forever. Because if you never change this thing here, well, why should you run it again? So that is a nice option. Maybe that solves the problem already, because I'm doing all my analyses in in Quarto now. So I would never do that in an R file. What I do is, let's see whether I can find a quick example. I think I even have that for one of the side stuff. Project events. So you see here I have a Quarto document that I've generated, and here I'm sourcing R code because I have written a custom function that I don't want to have in my R Markdown file, because sometimes those functions are very long and it's very ugly to have them in the R Markdown file if you, for example, want to show the code of everything, but I don't want to show the code of this stupid function here. I mean, this is really not relevant to understand anything of what I've done. This is just generating a correlation table with stars. So this is just a function to generate a correlation table. It's not important for the document at all. So I'm sourcing the R file, which I have here in the R folder. Then I have the custom functions file. I'm sourcing that at the beginning of my Quarto document. And then I can use this function here, the core stars, down here. So it's loading all my R functions into this QMD document, and then I can use them here. So I usually write like custom function stuff that is not relevant for understanding the code at all. I write those functions in an extra document I call custom functions.r, for example. And then I'm sourcing them into my QMD file. And then this still stays very clean. So I don't have this huge, long, shitty function here, which I don't really want to see here. But I'm just sourcing it. And I'm still adding this to my GitHub. So anyone who wants to see it can see it in the GitHub. But they don't see it in my file because it's just not necessary. So that's my workflow usually. And here I could actually also add the yeah, it depends a bit on what you do, I think. But if you want to have, like here I wrote a tutorial, so I think it's nice to see also the data steps, like the data preparation steps that I did. If you don't want to show that, you can also show it in an extra document. So you can also have multiple Quarto documents, one for cleaning, one for the analyses. I mean, I think it's not really, and then you can also knit them together. So you can also have one, how do I say that, like one super file that is then taking all those and knitting them into one big document. But you can also specify which ones you want to execute. I think I have an example of that as well. Let me see. I think it's in the studies. Multi-paper. Quickly how that would go if you have like multiple RMD files and you just want to, for example, you have multiple projects and you just want to not have them in one big file, but have like sub files for the different studies, for example. So you see that here, as I said, I have one super file which is called index.rmd, and then I have the different studies. And now if I run, for example, so you have to set that up a little bit, and here you just specify the different files that you have in your folder. That would be the vignette file, which is called 1 vignette, 2 psychorona, 3 observational. So those are just the names of the files here, and you specify those in additional code chunks in the header here. And this is still our markdown, so it's all just in this execution option at the top. And now you can actually say, okay, I want to render all those, and then you get this output file. So you have study 1 and then all the stuff for study 1, study 2 and all the stuff. It's not really pretty, but yeah, all the stuff for study 2 and then for study 3. But you can also say, hey, I just want to see study 1 and 2 because study 3 will be part of a different paper. Then you can set this to false, run that stuff again. Now you see it's in the render tab and not in background jobs, so very big disadvantage of our markdown because it sometimes takes ages. But now you see that you only have the vignette and the psychorona study in your output. So I think that is a very elegant or nice way to have like sub projects and be able to control which ones to include in your final report. So maybe you have one sub project data cleaning, one sub project pre-processing of the data, one sub project running the analyses, and one sub project reporting. And then maybe you want to show your collaborators the running the analyses and reporting, but maybe for other people you also want to see the data cleaning, so you can just set those to true and false and have that in your output document or not. So I think that is a nice feature, and now it also runs. All right, so far so good. Since the running the QMD file worked for most of you at least, let's continue here. So now the rest, I think, is just add-ons. So now you know how to use R and how to use Quarto, more or less. Of course, if you have questions, you can always also reach out after the workshop. I know maybe for some people it's a lot, maybe for some people it's very repetitive. So if you have some additional questions, always just reach out to me, and I'm very happy to explain stuff again. I just really like explaining that stuff, so that is totally fine. So now we go to Zotero and R and Quarto. So using Zotero with R, I think that is just a super great thing to use Zotero with R, because it really saves you so much time. And since we don't really have a lot of time left, I won't explain how to actually get Zotero and R running, but I have a link here. And I just used this link to set it up. It's really easy to understand. It's really nicely described. So if you follow the steps that are outlined here, I think it took me like 45 minutes, maybe 1 hour to set up Zotero and use that within R. So it's really not that difficult to do. I won't show how to set it up now. I will just show you how you could use it with R. So you go, for example, to your file that we have. Let's go back to the reporting. And then we go to the workshop Quarto, and we go to Quarto workshop, and we go to the project. And I think it was here. And we open again our first document. Okay. So let's say you want to have a reference, you want to describe some theory. So what you would do now, if the Zotero add-on works for you, is you would type Control K, and then it's telling me something is not running. So you first have to open up Zotero. If you work with Zotero anyway, that is pretty great. I haven't worked with Zotero before. I always worked with Mendeley, and I switched to Zotero only a couple of months or like a month ago because I found out about this nice add-on here, and it's actually pretty similar to Mendeley, I think, or other reference systems. And the nice thing is that you can integrate it easily into R. So let's say I have my Zotero open now and I want to include some references into my document. So again, I would type Control K for me. So you can also set up the shortcut yourself. And then I would search for a reference that I have in my library here. It can be any reference, and insert that. So let's say here's someone who said something interesting. And I just add something else, another reference, and again, Control K, it's opening up here. Say I want to have something with machine learning, scoping review of machine learning. Okay, let's take that one and another one. Control K, maybe artificial intelligence. Okay, yeah, I don't know. Let's just go with this one. Okay, now I have the references here. So they're just, it's not even necessary to upload anything to R, it's just directly connecting to Zotero and inserting the references here. So you really don't have any work to do. The only thing you have to do at the end, so if you have your text ready and everything is written down, you have all your references here, you would need to export your library to better BibTeX. Okay. My library, let's just insert this here. And then you would insert that into your project folder. So I have my reporting, workshop. And now I would actually, I would just add a new folder for this and call it resources. Create that folder. Everything looks fine, and save the my library there. It takes a bit because it's a big library. And now if I go one folder up, I would see my resources folder here. Okay, looks fine. And now the only thing I would need to do is to, I think I know that by head, is to say where to find your bibliography. So you would go one folder up, that always means one folder up, the 2 dots, and then into the resources folder. And then it's my library.bib. Let's see. Yeah, so that already worked. So now you have the references down here, which is pretty neat, I think, and pretty easy to do. So the only thing is to upload your library at some point, export it from Zotero and upload it to a folder, and then specify the path in your bibliography. And then another really neat thing is that you can specify a style. So you can have, like, for example, the APA 7 style. So your references are outputted to APA 7. The only thing you need to do for that is to download the CSL file. Search for APA 7. Okay. APA 7. No. Here. I think that's the one. Actually, I just want to download it. So you have your APA file downloaded. Should be in the downloads. And then I copy that. Go back to my reporting, workshop Quarto workshop, resources, and put that in here. Maybe, whoops, nope. Quickly rename it to APA so it's easier to find. All right, let's see whether I remembered correctly. I think it's really just this, then resources again, and then apa.csl. I hope that works. I think it should. Error. just go to another. Yeah, if stuff doesn't work, I would usually go to another project or see if I can find something where I actually made that work. Reports. See how it looks here. CSL, no, actually it's the same. Okay, let's try again. Or did it actually work? Maybe it just did it and I don't see it. Oh yeah, I think it actually did it without telling me. So yeah, now you see that this is outputted into APA7 format. So if you just run that, usually it works. So I wouldn't really know. I think it's just an error that was there before, but it actually did the APA7 styling. So now you have the references in APA7. So pretty neat. So you can just add the CSL file to any folder. You can also just put it directly in the folder where you have your document, or you specify the path to the CSL up here. And of course, you can also use another style than APA. Whatever you find interesting. Yeah. You mean copying it in here, into the resources? Yeah. So actually what I do, I only do that once. So usually I would work on this, for example, for 2 months or so, and then I feel the paper is ready, or it's like really in the final phase. And only then I would upload the library here. No, the entire one. But sometimes, for example, if the project is not finished and I find another reference that I actually want to use and I add that to this library, I can still, of course, use that here. So I can still do the Control K and insert that here. Hummel, him, whatever. So it's random. But it wouldn't, it would find it here in the Quarto, but it wouldn't find the reference because it hasn't been added to the resources my library bib yet. So if I add something here and I want to see that in the output file, then I always need to upload the library again. But that is, that's something I do once or twice. So if I, for example, find the paper is finished, I upload the library only then, not before. For the report, so that I have a nice looking references section. Maybe there's also an integration or something to save it directly, like to export it directly to a folder or something. But like for me, for the entire project, it takes 10 seconds to upload the library at the end. So I think this is still, because you can also use references you don't have in that library. So as long as you have the reference somewhere here, you can add it to your document. But let's imagine I have a reference that is called 44, like this. And I have that added now from my Zotero and I render this. Then what happens if I reopen that? Sorry, I always have to navigate to the correct folder. Reporting, workshop Quarto, Quarto workshop. Then this would happen. So it wouldn't find the reference because it's not in the bib folder. But in my normal document, I can still insert any reference from Zotero, even though I haven't exported the library like the current one. I think that's very neat. So before I always had to have like the reference in some bib folder, and then I could only insert those that are already in the bib folder. But now I can use all, like with the add-on, I can use any reference I have ever added to my Zotero. So I think that is pretty nice, and you don't really have any extra work except for at the very end of your project at the library. So it can render this reference to a nice looking one. But that is one step at the end of the project, and that is it. So I think very easy workflow, kind of. What was I? Yeah. Is that actually, I was really happy about it. So when I found this add-on, I was really like, good. But Susanne, can you maybe share how if it's even easier, like your workflow? Oh, I don't hear. Yeah, now I hear you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 But if you now add something new, like a new reference to your Zotero, would it still export that reference? Even if it's not in the .bib file? Okay. Ah, great. Okay, yeah, that could be the case, that you don't have to export it manually, but it's actually already updated by Zotero itself. I mean, that is even better. Yeah, that is great if you can find like the possibility. But yeah, I mean, also like downloading it manually doesn't take. I mean, yeah, it's really a matter of seconds, kind of. So yeah, or maybe a minute. So it's really kind of easy to do anyway. Sometimes you want to have APA style papers, and some journals require you to have them in Word. I mean, that still happens. So we just give them the paper in Word, and that's actually also not that difficult to do. It's actually super easy to do. And the best way, I just show you with the current project of mine. Susanne already knows the document. Okay, I have a QMD file here, and the only thing I have to do to render this to a Word file is to specify a template, like a reference doc. And I have created a reference doc for APA 7. So you find that in the config folder, and also all my stuff, like all the code, and this also is on my GitHub, so you can always find those. For example, also the template and stuff in my GitHub if you want to use it yourself. But the only thing that I did is creating a Word template that is kind of looking nice. So that has all the word, like the stylings for APA 7. So the center style for the title, and then like my name. So you can change, of course, the author settings and stuff after you've rendered the Word document. But the basic styling is pretty much APA 7. So you have like the centering of the first double header, then you have the text with the indent. The spacing is APA 7, everything is APA 7, and then you have the other level headings here, and the text. So I think that is what you have to do, kind of. So you have to once specify a document where you just set these settings, and you can do that with the styles pane. So you would just say heading 1, and then you have to specify that here once. So you probably know how to do that, or you just use a template that someone else created. So for example, if you download this template here, this text, whatever is in the text doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It just has to be text, and it has to be somewhere specified how this is formatted. So if you download this, it should already work for you. So you just need this document. That is all. Add that to your folder structure, and then refer to that with a docx reference doc, and then say where this is located. And now if this is rendered, it's outputting this document for me. So you see that the text here is all markdown. It's all markdown. So I have an introduction. It's just for fun, add something here. Let's remove the abstract and add something. Intro to the intro, some text, more introductory stuff. And now I just render that. And now you see that this is automatically added in the nice APA 7 setting. So you just have a Word file that is generated from your R Markdown that you can, for example, submit to a journal, and you even have some figures, so you can still set settings for that, of course, if you want to change it. And you have the APA 7 references. I think that's pretty neat, and it also allows you to still work in R Markdown or work in Quarto, even if you want to have like a Word output. For me, that was really helpful at some points. Do you have any questions about that? Okay, and all this is in my GitHub, so just find it there, download it from there. I will show you how to do that also now. Okay, that's the two great things also you can do with Quarto and R Markdown. Of course, there are many more functionalities and output formats and settings and whatever. So it's really a whole entire word that you can use. But this is, I think, the stuff that I use almost daily and that I find very convenient and very helpful also in generating reports, papers, HTML outputs, whatever. So now we're almost done, and I think like this final part of the workshop, I will only talk about code collaboration with Git and GitHub, and at the very end of the presentation I will also just quickly jump into generating websites. I still generated my websites using Blockdown, so that is not Quarto but Blockdown, like this extra package, because there was a request to share how to do that. But the most of the remaining part will be about code collaboration and Git and GitHub. And also here you find many additional material in the slides, so I won't really cover everything because we don't really have that much time anymore. I just go into like the quick options, and maybe hopefully you're able to use GitHub a little bit after this. So the advantages of using Git and GitHub is that you can contribute to open source projects. You can showcase your work, of course, via different output format, like on GitHub itself, but also on websites, for example. You can track changes across versions, and of course also save your versions in a very safe location and collaborate on projects together. And you have various integration options using Git and GitHub, like Amazon Google Cloud or Netlify pages. So you can also build your website, for example, in R, and then use Netlify to make the website as accessible to others. Some definitions. Maybe you've heard about Git and GitHub before. Git is a software that keeps track of your versions as a set of files, and it's local to you. So Git always works on your computer. It's keeping records of the stuff you have on your computer. And GitHub is a hosting service that can keep records remotely. So it's like Dropbox remote to you. It's not operating on your laptop, but it's operating remote to you. And it's specifically structured to keep records with Git. Then there's a repository, which is a set of files that's kept together by Git or GitHub. To commit means to take a snapshot of a repository, so a snapshot of a set of files. And committing is always local, so the stuff is kept local on your computer or laptop unless you push it. And to push means to move a copy of the stuff that you have on your local file structure to GitHub. So it's from your local computer or laptop to an online server. It's like uploading files to a website. So this is the basic setup. So you have files on your computer, you take a snapshot of it, then you have them in a local repository and Git is keeping track of that, and then you push them to a remote repository and then they're stored online. So this is the basic workflow. Setting up Git and GitHub. And we also won't do that now, but I have some links on how to set up Git and GitHub in the slides. Pretty easy. I think, setting up Git maybe takes 15 minutes, I'd say, and registering a GitHub account maybe also. So you have to register on GitHub and make Git run on your computer. Not that difficult to do. If you've followed the steps that are outlined here, if you type Git version, you should see your Git version. That's all in the terminal. So I would just type, just for showing that. And then you see the Git version that you're running. And then git config global username. And then you see your username. And if those two steps work, fine. Everything has worked for you. Everything is set up. And then the first thing you would do is you go to GitHub. So let's now imagine you wanna work on GitHub and you want to share stuff with others, or maybe you're working together in a repository. If you don't have let's just quickly, so this is kind of how it looks for me. So I have a couple of repositories. Some of them are really messy, but for example, the slides for this workshop you see here, I uploaded them here. Then my website, you can see that here, like all the stuff associated with that. And I can also, of course, create a new repository, and we just do that for fun now, just to show you how the workflow would be. So you would give the repository a name, and I don't add anything here. You can add a README, you don't have to, and then create a repository. Great, now I have a repository on GitHub that is called test repo. So what I would do next, to search for that is this step, fill in some info, create a public repository. Yeah, that is also important. So this is public, and I would always recommend you to keep most of your repositories public, because it also allows others to use the stuff. I mean, you need to be aware that others can access this now, but it also makes it possible to collaborate easily on projects. So if it's private, it's really you're the only one who can see it. It's not that much of the idea of GitHub. Okay, and now you would follow the steps in option 1, create a new repository on the command line. So we just follow the stuff that is here. And what we need to know is this is the remote repository. So what I described, this is all GitHub. So it's all remote to you. It's like Dropbox or something. And now you need to work locally. So you somehow need to connect your local files to the remote repository on GitHub. So let's say we're in the Quarto workshop folder. Let's go to the Quarto project 1 folder. It's a bit messy. Shouldn't look like this, but okay, anyway. And we want to have the remote repository in this folder. We want to have a remote repository here. So what you first need to do is initialize a GitHub repository, Git repository, sorry. And now you already see something happened. And this is only initializing an empty Git repository at this location. So it's just adding this .git file at this location. That is all. And now I would just see, just checking again what is in the folder. And I would just add everything. You can add a README, but there is no README, so I cannot add a README. I can first create a README if I want to. That would go via touch readme.md. Touch is the command on Mac to create a new file. So if I now look into this, I see that the README has been added. It's empty. It's not really that interesting. But I want to add everything, and everything is always with a dot. And usually you want to add everything. So at the beginning of a project, if you have all your files in order and you know, I want to share this stuff here, you just add everything. And not only the README. And now you have to commit it. So taking this snapshot and you always add a commit message. This M stands for message. My first commit. Should be more informative. So this is kind of, so at the end you can review your Git messages and maybe, for example, return to a previous version. So it's nice to have something informative here because then you know what you changed in that step. So I can, for example, say adding all messy files. Maybe a bit more informative. And now it's taking a snapshot of all these files. I'm already on the main branch. Branching, yeah, I won't really explain that now, so I don't have to set the branch now, but I would add the remote. It doesn't harm to do this step, but you don't have to do it. And now you would add the remote repository. So this is where I actually connect my local file folder to the remote one. That is all. And now I can push origin to the main branch. And that's that. So now I have all the stuff in my GitHub. So that worked. And this is also something you can now access. So other people could access this. They could, for example, clone the repository and then get all the files. So that is kind of the first step you would always have to do. And I think it's really, yeah, kind of intuitive. So here I'm just describing the steps again. So you navigate to the folder where you want to have that stuff. You initialize an empty GitHub repository. You create a file. You add the stuff from your local folder. You commit. So you take a snapshot of the files. You add the remote repository and you push to that. So here I'm pushing to the master repository because I changed the name of the branch to master, but you don't really have to worry about that now. So you just push to main. You push to whatever you see here. So you always push to what you see in the brackets, for example. So here it was master because I changed the branch. And then you see everything on your GitHub repository. So great. I think that is already it. If you just want to showcase your work, if you want to have a website or whatever, that's all. That's all you need. You don't really need anything else, any other GitHub knowledge than that. But imagine you now want to collaborate with people, work together on a project, and you want to be able to take a stage of what you did and also merge individual contributions into one overall project. And you wonder how to do that. So there are many, GitHub is mainly for collaborating and for contributing work to open source projects. And I will only describe scenario 1 to you, but there's also like scenario 2 that you want to contribute to an open source project. That is in the slides. We won't cover this today because we just don't have the time. But scenario 1, you're the owner or collaborator of a project. So collaborator of a project means you can go to settings, collaborators. Now I would have to add my GitHub, like a code, a verification code. You also have to set that up in the setup part, but easy to do. And then I can add people here. So I can search, for example, if I'm collaborating with Anna, I can add Anna, but I don't have her, so she's maybe not on GitHub yet. But if she was, I could add Anna. This one? Oh, that's great. So now you could, for example, also follow the steps that I'm describing here because you are now a collaborator in this project. So this is really for collaborators in one project. So we want to work together in the test repo because it's a very important data project, and Anna and I are collaborating on that. So what Anna would do now, because I already have the repository, is to git clone and then change the name here because it's not called test repo, but it's called test repo with the underscore. Test underscore, whoops, repo. Okay, it's actually not that wasn't that clever, because now I have now I have the repo inside of another one. But basically, for anyone, you could all just clone the repository, and then you have the file locally on your computer. Let's just clone it to this one here. So now I should see the test repo here. And you see that, well, that worked. So I have all my files now in the test repo. Or someone is ringing my bell like a maniac, but I just ignored now. And that also works with any other repository. So for example, if you find a nice project, let's say you want to search for a website that's been generated with Quarto. Well, there's not so much. Just another Quarto. Oh no, sorry, it's actually... Quarto project. Here. You can just clone that repository of this guy. So if you clone it, copy that and clone that to a new directory that is empty, you could do clone and then, whoops, git clone, and then insert that here. And now you have the stuff this guy wrote in your new directory and can work with that. It's sometimes very convenient if you have like projects other people created and you find that very nice and you want to use it as a template, you can just do that via Git and GitHub, via the clone option. Okay, but let's imagine we work together and we collaborate. So Anna has now cloned the repository. Then what she would like to do, or usually do, is let's go back to where I also did that. No, just one up. The test repo. So now I'm in my own, so I also cloned that, so I can follow the same steps. So what I would do now is git pull origin main, because I haven't created a master branch yet. So this would be main, and also for Anna, she would do the git pull origin main. And what this does is it kind of takes all the stuff that has happened between cloning and now. So for example, if she cloned the repository a week ago and I already did some changes, so I, for example, worked on the project a little bit and pushed my files to GitHub again, and now this repository has changed in between, in the meantime, then by this pull command, she would get all the changes I implemented in the repo that happened in the meantime, between she cloning it and now. So that is a very convenient thing. So you would do the git pull origin main. And now Anna wants to work on that and do something cool and add something like a new cool feature to the project. What she would do now is to create a new branch. So I already talked about branches a bit. So we are now on the main branch, but she can also create a new branch with this command. So this is just basically saying, hey, create a new branch and go to that branch. And let's just call it new feature. And now you see this changed here for me. So now I'm on the new feature branch. And now I can do some changes. So for example, let's just open a file. I just quickly do that via VS Code, Quarto project. Whoops. No, that is not what I wanted. Don't save. Code. Quarto project QMD. Okay, this is the Quarto project we have there now. That's a bit boring. So let's say she's adding a new feature to it, saying a 1001 plus 1 and saving that. So Anna has now done this change. So I'm Anna right now because Anna could do the same steps, follow the same steps. And she wanted to add this new cool feature. So let's say new feature of this project. And she's added that and she's saving the file. And she's still on the new feature branch. So what she would do now is the usual workflow. So add this. Okay, let's just try anyway. Edit new feature. And now she would push to the new branch that she created. So git push origin new feature. All right. So if I now go to the test repository, I see that something happened here, and that is someone else has pushed something to a branch, and I can now merge this new stuff into the overall project. So it's very nice to work with branches because this doesn't mess up the main branch. So for example, if the main branch is a very nice project and I work ages on it, then using branches like the new feature branch prevents you from adding stuff to the main project that people don't really want to have there at the end. And by using this new branch and checking out and pulling to the new branch, you can prevent messing up with the main branch, like with the main project. So I could now create a pull request. Anna could now create a pull request. I already see that there are no conflicts with the base branch. Actually, I'm a bit... Let's not merge this now. Let's first see what actually happened. So before merging, so I'm the owner of this thing, and I see that Anna has now added something, a new cool feature, and I'm the one who now decides to merge this new cool feature into the main branch. I first want to see what did she do. And I can go to files changed, and then I see what was actually added, and I think, okay, yeah, that's a really cool new feature. I can also review that in detail, but since it's a very easy and new and like very straightforward change, I would just go ahead and confirm the merge. And now the pull request successfully merged and closed, which means that if I go back to my test repo and now go to I think we did that here, I see that the new feature was added and it's now in the main project. So that's basically it. So that's how you would contribute to a project and also kind of prevent messing up a data file by using those branches and collaborate together. So I think this is already everything you need for collaborating on a file together. And once everything is resolved, you would merge this into the main or master branch. And then the final step is to now check out again to the main branch. And now I'm back on the main branch. And I can now again, of course, pull origin main to see what, that worked, to see what happened. And I already see that something was added. And now I have the new file on my laptop because the pull request has been merged. And then if I want to add another feature, same workflow. So I would check out to a new feature. Usually you use feature branch names that are a little bit informative. So if you want to add a data reader, you call this data reader and whatever, new cool feature, whatever. Make your changes, push this to the branch. Someone else reviews that, merges it into the main or master branch, and so on and so on and so on. And that is kind of the easy way how to collaborate using Git and GitHub. The idea was, but we're already a little bit far, a little bit above the time limit. So what you could do maybe after the workshop is trying to get Git and GitHub running first, of course, and then just play around with it a little bit. Maybe add some of your projects on GitHub, see whether that works. Maybe troubleshoot using some googling, or contact me and I help you out. And that would be that, but we don't do that now. There's also the option to integrate OSF with GitHub. So sometimes when I pre-register stuff or something, I also use my GitHub account with OSF, so you can integrate all the files you have on GitHub also into OSF. Here's some description on how to do that. It's also super easy, and then you have the code, the data, whatever on OSF, and it's very easy to integrate that. And of course, there are so many more options and possibilities. But just contact me if you have questions about anything I haven't covered today. And just a quick glimpse into the blockdown stuff, because Susanne was interested in how I created the website. So I also did my website with R, and I used the Hugo Apero template, kind of. So Hugo Apero already, it's like a very nice website template that already looks pretty neat and pretty nice. And I just used that, so I kind of cloned it from GitHub. So there's a GitHub repository with the Apero template. You clone that, and then you just add your stuff to it. So I have my Anne-Web project, and then a block down. And then you just have basically all the folders here. So you have themes, which is the Hugo Apero theme that is added automatically. It's all added automatically, basically, except for the R that I added. And in the content, you have the different, so if you go to the website, it's usually, you have like different headers here, and you set up the general, like the build-up of the website is set up in the config.toml. So here you see certain settings, also stuff to ignore. Yeah, some links to use, like the social parameters, so those things here, Twitter and so on. But also the different headers. See, here's the about header, the blog header. And then if you go into the content folder, you see those different menus, basically. So in the about folder, there's an index, there's the header, and here you see what I wrote in the header. So if you go to about, you see the welcome here as the headline, and then the text. So yeah, I think it's kind of easy to set up, I would say. So if you understand a little bit like how files are organized and how you refer to, for example, data files, but also to photos or whatever, like how to use like internal links and stuff, I think it's kind of easy to set up a website yourself. You just clone the repository for the Hugo Apero theme and then just change whatever you want to change to your needs.